Welcome. This is my monthly update on the status of solar cycle 25. So this is for the month of June 2021. Unfortunately, we've been short of solar data this month because HelioViewer has been down for a fair proportion of the time. And so I'm going to have to do the best I can with what we've got. Let's take a look at some sunspot statistics for the month. We've had no major regions, and I'm defining major regions as those regions with over 1,000 millionths the surface area of the sun. A moderate region would be over 500 millionths, and we've had one of those this last month. In 2021, 96% of the regions have been new cycle regions, that's solar cycle 25 regions, 92% in the north and 100% in the south, which means that the south seems to be completely rid of the old cycle. The north still has some part of that cycle hanging on. We've had 60 spotless days in a row. That's the longest run since October of 2017, which was during the decay of solar cycle 24. Let's take a look at the long-term trend in sunspot numbers. This graph shows the daily sunspot number in yellow, the monthly average sunspot number in blue, and what's called the smooth sunspot number in red. That is where you've taken the sunspot number and smoothed it over a 13-month period. Now, the minimum between solar cycles 24 and 25 was in December of 2019. The equivalent minimum between solar cycles 23 and 24 was in December of 2008. So these two minima are almost exactly 11 years apart. So far, solar cycle 25 seems to be rising a lot faster than solar cycle 24, which would imply that solar cycle 25 is going to be a larger cycle. However, at the moment it's following what's called the SC prediction, which is the lower of the two possible predictions. We'll see how long that lasts. That can change in a minute. The question is, can we quantify this increase in rate of rise of the solar cycle compared to the maximum that we were expecting? And there is a way, and this shows a plot of the sunspot number after 18 months after minimum for the previous 24 solar cycles. Solar cycle 24 is labeled there with a circle around it. We can fit a trend line to this. There they are. The dashed line is the official least squares fit, but it's not a very good fit, I will warn you, so we have to be cautious here. There's a fairly broad range of values over these cycles, so that's going to add a large uncertainty to the estimate. Now, where is solar cycle 25 compared with all of these? Well, it's here at the moment. And you can see that it is consistent with a solar cycle of about 150, but there's fairly large uncertainties there, plus or minus 60. Here is my estimate of 165 based on other factors, and you can see it's at least consistent with that particular estimate so far. Now remember that solar cycle 24 was 120, so either of these, 150 or 160, would represent a significant increase in the size of the cycle. It would have to go a lot faster in the coming months to start getting up to 200 or higher, but it would also have to almost completely stop to get a cycle that's much less than 100. And both of those things seem quite unlikely. So we can conclude there will be no major cycle or a grand solar minimum based on this measurement alone. However, again, we'll have to wait and see. I keep a track of new sunspot regions. This is not only the numbered regions that NOAA puts forward, but any region that was strong enough to produce a sunspot, no matter how short a time, whether just for a few hours or a few days. June of 2021 was the third most prolific month, and there is a proviso on that from the point of view that we have missing data for part of that month, so that may well be an underestimate. As far as flares are concerned, June was a drop from the previous month. We only had 10 C flares during the month and no M flares. Those are the ones marked in green. And so far, at least, we've had no X flares, which is a little bit of a concern because I would have thought we would have had one by now. We've had a number of regions that were numbered. We went from 2827 all the way up to 2835, and the 2835 region was the moderately sized region that I was talking about earlier. It reached over 500 millionths of the surface area of the Sun. Here's a picture of that region, rather beautiful, high detailed picture, but you can see it was a large spot followed with a number of small trailer spots around it. Now earlier I said I was expecting to see some X flares and we haven't seen any yet. That unfortunately wasn't a prediction, otherwise I'd be looking very good at the moment. Because just a few days into July, we got our first X flare. In fact, the region that formed has produced 6 C flares, 3 M flares, and an X flare in a period of basically 24 hours. That's quite remarkable. Now, nobody could have forecast this because, first of all, this region formed just as it was going over the west limb. And so none of us could see what the sunspot structure or dynamics were, or what the magnetic configuration of the region was. So this was almost an impossible prediction to make. But nonetheless, I'm pleased we're starting to see X flares. It means that solar cycle 25 is truly taking off. Even with the severe lack of data, we can take some conclusions from all of this. June of 2021 showed a small uptick in the sunspot number, an increase in the number of regions, a decrease in the number of flares, an increase in the number of coronal mass ejections. So this was pretty much business as usual, a slow rise of the cycle in the early stages. The solar cycle forecast based on the speed of the rise is about 150, but with a large uncertainty of plus or minus 60. This is a significant increase either way over solar cycle 24. And my forecast remains at 165 like it has for some time now, which is consistent with the measurements of the rise rate of the cycle, given the large error bars. And July is off to a ripping good start. We had our first X flare. This is the largest flare of solar cycle 25 so far, the first X flare of solar cycle 25. And hopefully there'll be more soon. So until next time, stay safe and goodbye.